So today we're going to talk about Jump's drill down feature. Um, Let me just kind of show you what it is. It's a lot easier to see once in an example. So right here, I have a bunch of real estate data from San Francisco, and I have different graphs here. Like for example, this one it shows me all the condos, single-family residentials in San Francisco. Over here, I have this beds and bath heat map, and then a location of where all these things are. Now, when we do the drill down graphs in Jump, what basically it kind of means is like this. I have a graph and I'm looking at, for example, single family residentials. So if I hover over a bar right here, you see I have this next hover graph here. If I click on this, this shows me all that little heat map that I had for all the baths and beds, but now just for single family residentials. And now if I look on over here and I'm looking at, bedrooms and bathrooms, maybe I'm interested in whatever this section is right here, I get another graph now. And this shows me the location of those specific ones right there. So the drill down graphs are very helpful because it takes you these kind of data in a very broad sense, and it helps kind of narrowing it down towards something that you want to make. And so what I'm showing right now are these custom drill down ones. So I made these a little bit before, and they're not that hard to make. And that's one of the things I love about Jump is graphing is super easy on Jump. So again, just kind of show you again, I'm looking at his condos. I have them colored by price right here. So there's a lot more expensive ones right here. If I click on that, it should show me where that is located in San Francisco. I guess this one is somewhere here. Uh, so we'll see how we can make these types of graphs in Jump. And then when we have some time left in the agenda, there's a few other things I want to talk about that are related more to interactive reporting and custom graphs, and not so much on drill down. But again, they'll be time dependent, and we'll get into that. Also, here's a bunch of drills I thought was kind of cool. This is ancient Egypt, by the way. So if you're wondering how they built the pyramids, it was with these things. So in Jump, there are the main tools in Jump are called Graph Builder and Friends. We have distributions, Graph Builder, fit Y by X. Mostly everything we're going to talk about right now is going to be focused on Graph Builder. So if you've never used Graph Builder before, welcome. And this will be a good introduction on how to use Graph Builder and how to talk about these hover labels. So before getting into like those kind of more complicated labels, I want to talk about what hover labels are just in general. So here I have a bunch of airline delay data. So I have these different airlines I have. I have Southwest, American, Delta, and so on. If I build just a regular graph with them, so I'm just going to take two variables. Let's just say airline delay right here. I have a bunch of points right here, right? If I go over one of these points, this thing that pops up, this is a hover label right here. And these hover labels are very useful because if there's certain points that I find worthy of kind of highlighting, I can highlight them right here and pin them like this, and this puts them right there. Now this is like the most basic version of a hover label, and in this case, all it really tells me, the hover label will always tell me is the variable that I have displayed on the graph. So I have airline delays displayed on the graph, so my hover label will tell me the airline display as well as the row number right here. Okay, so if I'm curious on where this specific dot exists in the data table, I can go ahead and find that out. If I add other elements on here, so for example, if I take distance right here and I just drop down the color, you can see that my hover label changes now. So I have airline delay and mean distance. So basically, every time I add a new kind of column variable in my graph somewhere, my hover label is going to be adding that onto there. So if I don't know, for whatever reason, let's just say I take month now and I just did size. Actually, I guess that one didn't work that well. But let's just say if I do airlines, I go to wrap here. I guess this one separates out by that way, so you don't have to hover label there. But in general, normally the hover labels will always add whatever element you have on the graph on there. The other options you have when you're making hover labels is you have an option of what you want there to be labeled. So, for example, if I want elapsed time to be labeled there, I can right click on this and hit label. So this time, if I build that same graph again, so graph builder, go to arrival delay. If I go on top of this, it has my elapsed time there as well now. So I have my arrival delay and my elapsed time. If I also want the distance, right click on there, hit label. You have this little label symbol right there. And now if I redo this, I should go to redo and should do non-numeric recalls on that. Let me just start that from the beginning. So arrival delay again on here. If I go on that, it should have my distance, my elapsed time, and my arrival delay. So based on what I want, I can kind of make simple labels like that. That's like the most basic version of a hover label right there. What we're doing with the whole drill down graphs is it's kind of it's taking the hover label to a next level. So in this case, let's do a graph with just arrival delays again on the Y, and I'm going to take airlines and put them on the X right here. Okay, I'm going to make a bar chart. Let's order this by descending so I can see which ones have the highest delays and which one have the lowest delays. If I go over top of this, it gives me exactly what the hover label was before. Everything that I have labeled in my columns menu, as well as whatever variables I have on the graph. So I have elapsed time, distance, American airline, and the mean arrival label. If I right click on this, you have a bunch of options on what you can make your hover labels here. Okay, so this is like the very simple version of the drill down one. The very first thing is just the standard hover labels that gives you information, and this one are the preset drill down graphs that you get in Jump. So we're gonna do a line one real quick. So if I highlight this right here, you can see now I have this new hover label that gives me this, but I also have this graph here. And so now if I click on this, this pops it up over here. And now if I click on over here, like for example, I'm looking at mean arrival delay versus month for American Airline. I'm seeing that for American Airline, for whatever reason, June has a lot of delays. I can look at another one. Let's look at United. I have a friend that works at United, so let's look at what kind of delays they got. So I can see that for American Airlines, they're peaking at May, and for whatever reason, these ones are peaking in December. If I want to go deeper into that data right there, I can highlight on one of these points right here. So I'll click on this graph, and now I have this whole days a month graph right here. So because I made my hover label as a line graph, it's going to drill down in terms of line graph. And this is a very nicely organized data set where I have those kind of hierarchies of having month, days a month, and then days a week as well. But you can change those hierarchies as well when you're making your drill down graphs. Now, this is kind of the preset way of doing drill down graphs in Jump. And there's a bunch of options in there on how you can kind of make these types of graphs here. So if you go here again, right click, hover label, there's a bunch of options of any type of drill down graph you want to make. I personally like making the more kind of custom graphs because it's it allows for data exploration in a different way. So let me pull up a different data set. Also, I think all these data sets, all these data sets are in the sample index. So if you go to help here and you go to sample index and you go to see alphabetical list, the airline ones are right here. So I was looking up the airline delay ones, but I also saw this aircraft incident ones. And I kind of got curious, and I was curious of what this aircraft incident ones was. So I made a drill down graph on there just for fun. And here's my drill down graph. Okay, so I have all these aircraft incidents right here, fatal, non-fatal, and then they're all ordered by whatever state there are. So it seems like California has the highest one, maybe because it just has the highest population. And then Texas, and then I thought AK was Arkansas, but I found out it's Alaska, and then Alaska. So now if I go in here, I hover over this, I made this particular graph where I'm looking at aircraft damage versus the broad face of the flight. So there's some different damage levels happening on the aircraft based on whatever they're doing. So maybe maneuvering, standing off, takeoff, or taxi. Seems like there's a lot for landing on this one. There was substantial damage. And now I can click on this one right here, and I made a geographical map. So I used to live in California. Well, I lived in Northern California, so like near the Ukiah area, and I can see there's like one really north one right there. I think I made one more hover label. If I click on this one right here, it tells me what the make, model, and plane was, as well as the accident number. So this way, if I'm an investigator looking at this particular data, right, I can say, well, let's look at Texas, or I was just California again for simplicity. I can look at a region right here. This one's looking at climbing, and I can find that. Well, it seems like that one's not showing on that one, but I can find where they are, and then and then drill down into the data and actually get the report number as well. So to make all these types of graphs, the way I would recommend is you kind of start broad and then you start making them smaller and smaller, more detailed. So let's see how we can make this type of drill down graph. So the first one I did was I kind of made that broad graph first, right? The broad graph was looking at, I think, what was it? The last location, which was the state right here, and I just made a bar graph right there. I just kind of labeled this, ordered this by count descending, and then I just took, I think, fatality, I put that into overlay right there, and this looks a little bit like the one I want, not side by side. I think I want it stacked like that. So we can do a stack. Now you can see that the first graph I have, if I do a hover label on there, it's just the simple one that I had before. If I want to add a custom one to this, what I got to do is I kind of make that in a separate graph builder, and then I can paste it into there. So what I'm going to do is do that one right here. So this one is looking at the counts versus the states. I want to make a heat map now, and the heat map was, I think, what was it? It was, I think, not a purpose of flight. Or let me just click on that graph I had earlier so I can see what it was. It was broad-based maneuvering versus damage. Okay. So so broad phase of flight right here, and then it was aircraft damage right here, and I made that into a heat map, which is this one right here. Okay, a few tips though. So now I have this heat map. I want to insert this heat map into that first graph that I made. Okay, so if I want to do that, right click. Oh, I'll click on this red triangle here. This is Save Script button, and then I'll go to Clipboard. Okay, so now this heat map is saved to my clipboard. I'll go back to my original graph right here, and now I'll right click, and I'll go to Hover Label, and I'll go to Paste Graphlet. And now when I highlight something right here, you see that heat map pops up, but for that specific section. So this is the heat map for specifically California. And you know what filters are being used because one, it's listed down here. And the other thing is there's a local data filter right here that shows you what it's looking at. So this is looking at the fatal ones in California, and then this is the one based on substantial or destroyed aircraft. So based on that, that's kind of how you would nest that. But you probably realized in the other one that I had over here, I had this one open, and then on this one I had another one where was this map right here. So how do I make this map one? So again, what I want to do is you kind of start broad. I kind of start broad, and then I kind of work down. So I made this heat map one that I pasted in there. Now I want to make a geographical one. So a geographical one's really easy. Um, Easiest way to do that is find latitude and longitude, and kind of control click, grab them both, drop them into the middle, and then just right click here, go to graph, background map, street map service, hit OK. And then this should give me a map of everything. I zoomed into the California region because most of the data was kind of concentrated over here and because it's like US flight data. So I zoomed in that section. If I don't zoom in right now, when I paste this hover label in, it's gonna remember it in the exact configuration that's I left it. So look at this configuration that I'm leaving it in. I'm leaving it with the control panel open. So that's this one right here. See all those options? Those are my control panel. So if I take this hover label like this, and I take Save Script to Clipboard, and I go over here to this graph, right click, go to hover label, paste Graphlet. Now if I highlight this thing right here and I click on this graph, it's gonna remember that I have my control panel open and that I was zoomed out. If I don't like that, what I would do is edit that in the previous one. So this is what I want, but I don't want this control panel. Actually, hold on one thing. Let me. Do I want to color by anything? No, it's not color by anything. I just kind of want it like this, just as a big map. Now, if I go to this clipboard and go to Save Script, go to Save Script to Clipboard, go back here, right click, and now I'm going to go to Paste, hover label, and Paste Graphlet. So now if I click on something, so this one had the highest count, and now I click on it, when it pops open it pops it open the way I remembered it. And this way, it was without the control panel, but with the map kind of zoomed out. So based on how you make your uh, the more detailed label, it's gonna remember how it is, and then uh, when you open it up, it'll open up just how you left it. So a lot of the way people describe this is like those like Russian nesting dolls, where you have that big doll and then the small doll and the smaller doll. Make the smaller doll exactly the way you want it before you nest it into the other one, because the way you nest it, it's gonna be remembered that way. So now this looks pretty good right here. So now if I click on this, it gives me the map of where I want to look. And so what I'll do now is these are two dolls nested, right? I have my map one, and now I have this heat map right here. And now I'm gonna go back to here, save script to data table. Oh, sorry, not data table, to clipboard. Save script to clipboard. And so now this whole script, where when I hover over this and I get the specific map, is saved to my clipboard. I'm gonna go back to my original graph, and I'm gonna go right click, hover label, paste graphlet. Okay, so now if I hover over something right here, click this one, hover over this one over here, click this one, it should give me exactly to that map I want. And that's basically how quickly you can do stuff with hover labels. So my suggestion to you is kind of just remember that visual, the nesting dolls. Um, the way you kind of nest the bottom one is going to be remembered all the way up the hierarchy. And it's very helpful to kind of start off with broad information first and then kind of drill down that way. So when I was kind of making this particular graph, I literally saw this data set yesterday and I was kind of just interested in it. So I kind of just popped it open. When I was looking at this, the first thing I was asking, well, which one just have the highest count? And I wanted to kind of organize by state. And then once I had this graph, I was like, well, what am I interested in next? I was interested in if the air if the plane had a lot of damage or not damage, and then what caused it to have a lot of damage. And then finally, what I wanted to see was, where it was located. And then finally, once where it was located, I wanted information on the plane. What kind of plane was it? And based on this data right here, this information on the plane, this is very specific, right? So this would not have made sense to have it in the very kind of first graph. But it's a very nice thing to have at the very end. And the nice thing about hover labels is wherever you have a graphic and jump, you can make that into a hover label. So this right here is a tabulate function right here, right? So what I did was for this particular graph, I went to analyze and I went to tabulate. And I just, started throwing things in tabulate that I thought would be helpful. I thought it'd be helpful to know what the registration number was, what the make was. Oops. Right now it's going to show everything in here because this is all the data. But I kind of made tabulate the way I wanted to make it. And then all I did was just click on here and then save script to clipboard. And then what I did was once I went to my map one right here, I just went to hover label and pasted that tabulate data. So now if I like highlight over something right here, it has that tabulate data for that specific point right there. The tabulate data is going to look like everything when I kind of first started out because it's listing all the data points. But I know when I was making my drill down graph, I was going to use this at the very kind of final point. And when I used it at the very final point, it was only going to bring it down to one data point. So that is basically hover labels in a nutshell, or I guess in like a Russian nesting doll shell. There's a few other examples on here. Let's see. Cool graph trick. But yeah, that's mostly kind of how you would want to do hover labels. There's a few graph tricks I would want to show you, and some other really nice things with workflow builder that is kind of used in Jump 17 and how it can use these hover labels. Um, Actually, let me just show you that kind of just straight up real quick. So I made this workflow right here. If you don't know what workflow builder is, it's a feature in Jump. And I made this using a bunch of data set from that San Francisco one. So this is what I showed earlier, right? Where I was looking at the San Francisco housing data, where I had these different ones. I had this graph right here, my condo and co-ops, my beds and bath, and then the actual location. Now this is using just the San Francisco data, and here's my drill down graph right here. So I can just hit this play button, and now if I want to drill down to this data right here, just highlight this, and I nested this data in a particular way. Now, what would be interesting though would be that if I could add new data to this, and this drill down graph could remember all that data. And kind of the nice thing in Jump is that you can do that. So all that data is being pulled in from this folder right here, this Redfin data set, that is just San Francisco data. But then I have all this extra data here that I think I just took from all over the country. So I'm just going to copy all this in here. All this data is copied in there. I'm just going to relaunch this workflow builder. Hit play. It's going to ask for give me all that stuff. Yeah. So I ran through everything. But now, let me open up that drill down graph again, this DD graph. I had it organized by state and province right here. Here's a quick trick that I like to use all the time. This is too much information. Whenever you have too much information on a graph, the one thing you should remember is the local data filter. So you can get the local data filter two ways. You can go up here, or you can click on here and go to local data filter. And in this case, what is the too much information? I have too many states I'm looking at. But I want to look at all these states here. So I'm going to go to states. And I'm going to order this by, let's see, display options, order by count. And I'm going to order this. So I see California is the highest, New York has the highest, and then Oregon's pretty up there as well. So I'm going to click on Oregon. Now, that drill down graph that I made earlier, I just pulled in all this real estate data from New York, Washington, everything that's not California. But that drill down graph that I made earlier exists in this one as well. So now I can look at Oregon and zoom into Oregon's map. This is kind of a mistake on my part, but in that previous one that I made, I zoomed in San Francisco, so it remembers that I zoomed in San Francisco. But if I made it properly, I would have just kind of kept it zoomed out and would have done an automatic zoom. But this is really cool though, because I made this drill down graph once, and then I can just pull in new data, refresh my data set with that new data, and now that drill down graph that I did earlier is now continuing on with new data. Again, this thing I was using right here was Workflow Builder, and if you're still on Jump 16, it's free to upgrade to Jump 17, and you can use Workflow Builder with that. There was this other kind of graph trick that I learned that is very helpful and nice whenever you're kind of doing interactive graphing, and that's kind of what we're talking about right here. And this is a combination of using Graph Builder and using a special formula that we're going to be making in a column right here. It's called the selected formula right here. It's very simple. It's just the formula is just literally just that right here. But I'll show you why you can use this. So this is a very cool trick. I'm looking at some bivariate data right here. I'm looking at weight in pounds of, in this case, I'm looking at cars and maximum horsepower. But I can see there's a few outliers I have right here. In this other graph I have right here, I just have maximum horsepower. And then on the bottom here, I have that selected graph. Now, this selected function is a very funny function because if I just randomly select rows, all those rows turn to ones and everything else is a zero. Now, this seems like a very kind of like innocent function, but you can do a lot of cool things with this one. And this is one of the cool things you can do. Is that when I have these two graphs up here, I'm looking at this bivariate analysis of weight and horsepower. And I'm curious at looking at these outliers right here. When I select those outliers, in my other graph right here, it shows me where those outliers exist in a box plot versus everything else that's not selected. So this is really cool because I can add this in conjunction with other graphing tools called like column switcher. So right now I'm looking at weight versus maximum horsepower, but I can switch this around. So I can say, let's look at engine size versus maximum horsepower. In RPM versus maximum horsepower, those outliers are still there. And I can see how this is changing here. Well, in this case, it's not changing, but I can see how it changes in weight now. So those outliers that I looked at before, let me look at how they look like in other variables. So, maximum horsepower, they're on the high end. City mileage on the low end. That's kind of predictable, right? But it's really cool when you can kind of find outliers right here and see how they compare to the rest of the group. And this function is a really good way of doing that. So let me show you how you can do this. This is a very cool trick, and I think more people should know about this one. So let me just delete this column. I was going to leave just in case I make a mistake. But I'll make another column called selected too. Okay, so this is what you want to do. You have a new column, right click on it, and go to formula. And now in the formula, if you can't remember, just remember select and then row state. And then you should see row state. So this is the formula right here. Selected, parentheses, row state, parentheses, and hit OK. I'm just going to delete this original column just to show you we're not cheating. And now if I just select columns, all these should turn ones. Once these turn out to be ones, all right, you're good to go. Now let's make two different graphs. Okay, one graph I'll make is the bivariate graph. Let me just take let's just take weight and city mileage and just throw that into the middle here. And we can put a line of fit on there if you want to. We'll just leave it empty just for this example. I'm gonna hit done on this one. And the other graph I'm gonna make is I'm gonna take that selected column that I made, which is this one right here, selected 2. I'm gonna drop that into my X, and then I'm gonna take whatever thing whatever variable that I want to look at. Let's just say highway mileage and throw that into the Y right here. Okay, I'll hit done, and now basically, I am done. Let me just pull these up to the front, show all. So now I have these two graphs here. Oops, actually, there's one thing I forgot to do. Let me just add a box plot on top of this so we have so we can see where the quantile ranges are. And now what I can do is I can look at different regions. I can see, well, what are these 3 points up here? Oh, I have a line of fit there still. So let me take that off. Show control panel, turn off that line. And so now basically what I can do is if I select points in here, I get this very nice analysis of those selected points versus everything else in their own kind of quantile distribution. And if I'm interested in highway mileage MPG, that's cool. But if I want to add a column switcher in there and just switch out highway MPG for other variables that we might care about, I'm just gonna pick all these things. And then I can just use my arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of move around and see where those outliers are in comparison to the rest of the group for other variables. So that is a cool graph trick that I saw that I really wanted to share with everyone. So the drill down graph, so you see this right here, everything that's up here, like accident number, location, last location, everything right here. Sometimes you might have something on here that you really don't really care about. So for example, accident number, there's just way too many points on here to recall for these accident numbers to actually be helpful. Last location, Florida, that's helpful. Location, somewhat helpful, still maybe too many points. But maybe I don't want those accident number and the location things in this hover label here. So if I want to edit that, what I'll use is a editor. Oops. So if I right click on here, I go to hover labels, and I go to this hover label editor. And there's a few editor things I can do here. I'm gonna go to this gridlet right here. Sorry, not textlet, it was gridlet actually. And there's this different things: delete, rename, reformat, style, so on. Let's just do a delete one. And you can type it in here. So I can type in, let's just say location. I'm gonna say add location and apply. And you can see that location is now gone from here. If you don't like typing it out by name, the easier way is doing this index option. So I can see this accident number is the very first thing on there. So that's index number 1. And I'll hit index number 1, add that on there, and hit apply. And then that gets rid of that. So now I can hit OK on that. Now, whenever I open up this drill down graph, when I hover over something, oh, I should have saved it actually. Oh no, it's because I didn't save the script beforehand. That's why. But it would have saved that if I actually properly saved the script. But what that does is it edits this whole section up here. So again, that's if you go to edit and then go to right click, hover label editor. In this case, we're going to go to gridlet, index 1 I want to delete, index 2 I want to delete. I'm going to apply that. And now it's did not apply the location one. Maybe location was an index 2. So I can go back to edit, hover label, gridlet, name, what's the location? Maybe we'll remember this way. Location, add that, apply. Okay, it takes that out. That's cool. Let me save this script as a new one. So new drill down. So hopefully this remembers that. If not, I have to figure out why it won't remember it. Oh yeah, but now it looks like it works. So now if I highlight something, it gives me exactly the hover label that I want. A quick note about this though, if I go into the next nest right here, it's not going to remember it for this one right here. So if you wanted to get rid of this accident number and location for the nest that was for the layer that was underneath, you would want to make those changes first, then copy to your clipboard, and then paste it onto the hover to the graph that's going to be above it in the hierarchy. So I would want to make edits here first, and then save this script to my clipboard. And then when I go here to hover label and paste Graphlet, then I would paste it there and it would remember those changes that way. So again, when you're making these hover labels, explore all the graphs you kind of want to build, and then kind of ask yourself, well, what do I want to be the last graph? What do I want to be a middle graph? What do I want to be the first graph? And how do I want my labels to look like when I hover over something? And edit those first, paste it into the next one, test it out. Seems good. Paste it into the next one, test it out, and kind of start working your way up the chain that way. And it makes great drill down graphs that way.